Right.
Right, you should check these ones. Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much for attending today. My name is Jane. I'm Research Development Manager, and I look after the Ecology and Conservation team and the Renewables team here on the Cornwall campus. So I recognise some of you and some of you won't have met at all. My colleague here is Celine. She'll introduce herself in a bit. She's been looking after mainly sort of like EU projects, haven't you? So she'll be giving you an introduction to some of the EU fellowships that might be, might be something you're thinking about. It's quite a sort of, it's a difficult one to cover because you're in so many different sort of research areas and everything. So there are lots of different fellowships you can apply to. So basically, we're going to do a very sort of like brief overview of what's available, where to find out information and where we can sort of help and support you. So if you've got any questions along the way, just sort of give a shout, and anyone on Teams, if you've raised your hand, then Celine should be able to see. Oh, come in. Hiya, come on in. And we'll try our best to sort of like answer questions as we go along, but also there'll be a chance at the end to ask any questions. So if you've got anything bit more specific, if you can wait until the end, that'd be great. And you might find that your questions are sort of covered as you go along, so we'll go through it and see. So a quick sort of agenda of what we're hoping to go through. So where to start and who to talk to, and then I'm going to give you a bit of information about UK fellowships and early career grant opportunities, and Celine's going to talk about EU international fellowship opportunities, and then there'll be a time at the end for any questions. Okay. So the aims of the workshop is just an introduction to us, just so you sort of know who we are. And as I said before, understand where to find out about possible opportunities. It's also really good to start to understand the timescales, because these fellowships always take a lot longer than people normally think. So when you first start thinking about it to when you actually submit the fellowship can sometimes take a year or even longer or something. You don't want to be trying to rush and submit a fellowship at the very last minute. So I think it's good to sort of understand sort of timescales that you want to be working to. And also quite a lot of the fellowships have internal processes, which you're probably aware of, because quite often I send emails out around to my departments and the other research development managers do. So quite often the funders will have a cap of only sort of like 6 fellows that can be put forward from the university. So it means that the directors of research and the faculty directors sometimes have to go through all the possible applicants and just reduce them down to a number that we can actually submit. So it's worth knowing the fellowships where there are internal SIS, and there are some where there aren't, and anybody can apply as long as you get approval from your department to go ahead with your fellowship. So yeah, we'll give you a broad overview of some of the most relevant schemes, but it won't cover all of them at all. So don't worry if the one you're thinking about is not covered in there. We can always talk about it later on. And generally, the fellowships all sort of want the same things. They're looking for the same sort of criteria. So although your research area might be different, it will still be relevant, if you're considering the fellowships and everything. Okay, so can I just ask here in the room, is everyone sort of mainly postdocs at the moment? Yeah, anybody who's not postdoc? Yeah, that's fine. Can you just tell me what level or what you're doing today?
So I started my PhD and organising an eco symposium this year.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you're thinking about fellowships like in the future. Yeah.
So university and PhD.
Okay.
Considering fellowship.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's never too early to start sort of thinking about it. I think the earlier you're aware of what's out there and what opportunities there are, the sooner you can start sort of working, with your CV and everything towards that. So you get everything sort of in line, know what you want to aim for. So research development team in Cornwall, we're a really small team. Jen Siggs up at the top there is the Cornwall cluster lead. So she manages overall our team, and she does some of the bigger sort of grant applications and some fellowships she supports as well. Then there's myself, Jane Rowe. So I'm discipline lead for ecology and conservation and renewables. Katie Moore is my colleague. She's currently responsible for DEAS, Earth and Environment Science, and also ECHH. But Katie's covering Hannah, who's on maternity leave. Hannah is coming back in the summer, and Katie's now got a new job and leaving me next month. So there's gonna be like less of us. So I'm going to be taking over ECHH when Katie leaves next month, and Jen is going to be sort of discipline lead for DEAS. But basically, within our team, we all sort of like help out, and if someone's got a lot of applications at one time, we'll sort of like step in and help them. Celine, who's going to talk to you in a moment, is going to be the discipline lead for HAS, but Celine is basically only starting our team very recently. She's working from the Streatham campus. And so she's going to be helping us with any HAS applications, and also is going to be our main sort of EU international support. So she'll be helping with that. And then we have David Scott, who's our research development advisor. He's also the discipline lead for the business school down in the Cornwall campus. And David might be the person that you get in contact first when you send through an initial email or something. He might ask you a few questions to see which of us as research development managers might support you. And if it's a smaller grant or fellowship you're looking for, it might be David that supports you with that as well. So it will be someone from our team that will get in contact with you and interested in going to go. So what support can we give to you? So it's really important to say that we have to do this alongside your academic supervisor and mentor, because I am in no way a science expert or academic at all. So I know very little about the actual science of the projects and the fellowships that you're writing. But your academic supervisor will be the person that you will speak to about the science side of the application to sort of see if you're on the right lines. They can look at your draft reviews and things like that. Where we support you is sort of almost everything around the science part of the fellowship. And if you find, sometimes, quite often, especially if you're a postdoc, you might find that your line manager, your supervisor, isn't actually the best person to be supporting you with your sort of fellowship application. You don't need to have them as your mentor. You can choose anyone within the department or even outside the department if you want to be your, to be your mentor, to really support you through the whole fellowship process. It might be that you want to have a mentor that's like a current fellow in the department at the moment or something, so they can really give you some sort of good advice of like what to look at and how to sort of put the application together. So don't feel it has to be your supervisor, your line manager that you sort of work with on your application. It's totally up to you. And if you are having any troubles at all finding a mentor, then come and talk to us. We'll then liaise with your director of research and find a suitable person for you. So don't feel lost and thinking, I don't know who to, who to contact about it. So we'll help you to plan your funding approach, specifically the timings and what you need to prioritise when you're doing your fellowship. We've got a really good library as well of successful applications for loads of the different fellowships. So it's really good to see examples of successful applications, just so you can get an idea of the sort of level you want to be at, the sort of competitiveness. And also quite often I find that when people look at the applications, they realise they're not as scary as they first thought. And actually when you see someone else's, you think, okay, it's broken into those sections. You don't have to put massive information. You're normally really limited with the word limits you can put into the applications anyway. But I think just seeing other people's just gives you that confidence to think, just to make it seem more real and to feel like it's something you could actually, do yourself. So if you're considering any kind of fellowship, get in contact with us. I'll show all our contact details at the end, and we can send you through examples and everything, so you can have a look at successful ones. And like I said, we can help with the non-science elements of the proposal. So public engagement, career development, we'll talk about that in a bit, about your narrative CV that you need to have, justification of resources, which is where you have to justify all of the budget, the expenses you're going to have. You normally have to quite often have a head of department letter, supporting statement, and we'll obviously help with that, with drafting it, getting the head of department to sign those off and things like that, and working with you on the budget for your costs and stuff. So we'll do all of that with you. We also work with Exeter Innovation, EI, to build and strengthen partner links. So especially if you're looking to have any sort of industry partners or anything, let us know. We'll put you in contact with Exeter Innovation, and they can really help you to build those industry links and everything. You might find you want to go into a certain area, you're not quite sure what businesses or industries might be good to work with, but they will help you with that. And we're finding more and more with funders, they quite like it if you can have those sort of external links and everything. So it's worth sort of considering, you know, what external partners you might want to work with on your application. We can help you with your CV, which is now turning into the resume for researchers, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we can provide links to other professional services teams that you might want to talk to, like HR, etc. if you're able to have a postdoc or something on your project and want to find out a bit more about that. We can help with academic peer review if you're not quite sure who to approach to review your application. And if you get through to the second stage and you get reviews, we can then help you with your responses to those reviews, which you quite often have to provide. And if you are lucky enough to get through to the interview stage, then we can help you and set up mock interviews with academics here on campus and everything, just so you really have, people hate doing that because I think it's quite scary having that in an interview, especially if it's people you know, but actually it's so good and everyone finds it really useful when they do it. So it's definitely worth having those mock interviews. And sometimes you could even have interview sort of one-on-one coaching and everything with an external coach if that's something you want to focus on as well. So there's lots of support for you if you are looking at researchers. Now, how to find funding opportunities. It used to be the case that we would send out all of the funding opportunities all the time by email that we're aware of. Because our team is getting smaller and smaller in the way the university is working, they're now putting the emphasis on the academics themselves to find those opportunities and come to us with ones that they're interested in. So what I recommend that you all do, if you haven't already, is if you Google on the Exeter website, you can find Pivot RP. So Pivot RP is basically, it used to be called Research Professional, and it's basically like an online database where you can find out about all the fellowship opportunities and grant opportunities there are. It's actually really good. There's an Exeter, you sign in with your Exeter username, and you can, you have to set up your profile the first time you use it, but you can then set it up so you have like an email alert sort of like once a week and everything that tells you what funding is coming up. And you can make your search really specific to you. So you can say what career stage you're at, you know, what fellowships, what research area you're interested in, what sort of duration, and what amount of money and all things like that. And it can come up with really relevant stuff. I would say a lot of it that we found at the moment comes up with lots of American funders, which aren't always relevant, but you can filter it to only have UK funders or have EU, or, you know, you can make it really specialised to yourself. And I think it's also really good for, before applying for the big fellowships, it's actually, the funders normally really like it if you can show some independence and that you've got some funding yourself, just like really small pots of funding. So you can find lots, I looked at it the other day, and you can find lots of sort of like small travel grants and things like that and everything, opportunities. And normally they're easier to obviously get than the bigger fellowships. And if you start building up some small pots of funding that you've got, it just looks really good on your application, sort of show that you've already started to do that process of getting your own funding. So it's never too early to start applying for those small pots of money. If it's like under £10,000, we don't tend to support them directly because normally the expenses just go straight through to your bank account, and it might be for a trip or something like that. But if you've got any questions about them and eligibility, we'll always have a look through them with them and everything. So you can always sort of check and see if that's something you want to do. But I really recommend you signing up on that and just setting up your own, you know, specific search, and then come to us with anything you find. The really major ones, thank you for helping with that. The really sort of like major fellowships we will let people know about, but there's lots of weird and wonderful ones that we don't always know about. So find something, ask us, say, is this something that I could do, be hosted at the university and everything? We'll have a look at it with you, just see if, you know, if you're right for it, if you're eligible, and if it's something, you know, that the university would support. Okay. So just quite so often in our team, we have loads of acronyms, and I'm really aware that most people don't always know what the acronyms are. So apologies, most of you probably will, but if you don't, I just thought it's always quite useful just to go through UKRI, which is the main funders that I tend to sort of work with. So UKRI stands for UK Research and Innovation. They're a non-departmental public body, but they receive funding from the government. And the UKRI brings together the separate 7 disciplinary research councils and Innovate UK, which is more on the industrial side, and Research England. So I will quite often say to you, you know, do you think your work is more NERC or BBSRC? And you may not know quite what I'm talking about, but like NERC is like Natural Environment Research Council, you know, it's all the different ones are sort of listed there. If you go onto their individual websites, they're really good at, they all have a really good remit of what research fits within an area. And you're quite often, I find, because I'm working with ecology and conservation at the moment, a lot of projects can cross over between BBSRC and NERC. And it's sometimes really difficult to know if you should be applying to the BBSRC fellowship or the NERC fellowship. That's where I can help to like look at your project. We can speak to the academics. And sometimes, depending on how you word the application and what you focus on, you can sort of apply to both. It depends where your research sort of fits. So I think a really good starting point is look at where your research is and see which research council it might fit into and sort of go from there. And if you've got any questions on that, come talk to us. If you talk to the more senior academics, they know all about all these councils. You know, they'll be able to easily tell you, well, they should easily be able to tell you. Sometimes though, we submit applications to NERC and everyone thinks, well, it's definitely a NERC project. And they go, no, that's not us, that's BBS or C. And what I always advise people to do if they're a bit in the middle in that grey area is you can send like a sort of one pager to them beforehand and just ask them and say, is this within your remit? And then they'll come back to you and confirm if it is or it isn't. And it's worth doing that before you put the effort into doing the whole application to then have it rejected. So I always recommend, if you're not sure and if we're not totally definite, that getting that confirmation from the funder that it would be acceptable for them to consider it is definitely something, you know, worth doing. Okay. So what ECR fellowships are available? I'm just going to go through really quickly some of the main ones that we tend to support, which is the Leverhulme Early Career Fellowship, Royal Commission of 1851, BBSRC Fellowship, there's the NERC Independent Research Fellowship, Royal Society one, and there's also a Dorothy Hodgkin one, which is part of Royal Society, and that's for people who have caring needs, they need more flexible working and things like that, so that might be something that's relevant. There's Welcome Early Career Awards, there's also Career Development Awards, but their Career Development Awards are more for mid-career people. Then we have the UKRI Future Leader Fellowships, and then we have the Marie Curie. But like I said, those are the main ones. I'm just going to go through, I've got a page on most of them. I'm not going to go through all of these details because there's like loads of them. I can send everyone slides if they want afterwards, just to have this sort of information. But if I go through a few, it just sort of gives you an idea of how they're all slightly different. So Leverhulme Early Career Fellowship is one that does have an internal SIFT. The reason for that is because the award only funds 50% of the fellow's salary. So the university has to cover the other 50%. And also Leverhulme don't cover any overheads or anything at all. So for the university, they're not a big fan of them because the cost recovery is really, really low. So they can only support a few of them. That is an early career one. So it's one, I think you have to be within the first, no more than 4 years since submitting your PhD for that one. So you'll find why it's quite good to sort of always have those timelines. When you start looking into each fellowship, you always like want to write a note of like, okay, that's for the first 4 years. This one I've got to be between like 3 and 8 years and things like that. Just so you know as the timeline goes on when you'll be eligible for all the different ones, because otherwise you can end up missing one of these early career ones because you haven't submitted your application until it's too late. So you want to sort of have a look at them. Success rate's not too bad in that, 18%, so like 1 in 5. So they're not, they're not the most competitive ones, which is good. And again, they have like a certain sort of area that, is within remit. Leverhulme basically tend to sort of fund things that they say the other funders won't fund. So if you find that your research doesn't seem to be fitting neatly in any of the UKRI research areas, then Leverhulme might be a good option. Leverhulme, though, do say they don't want to be like second choice funder, so you can't submit a really obvious NERC, fellowship to Leverhulme. They want something that's maybe a bit more or interdisciplinary and maybe just a bit unusual. If you look on the Leave the Hume website, you can see the fellowships that they've funded in the past and the titles and everything, and there's all sorts of things. It's quite interesting just to sort of see the different things they fund. So you want to look on their website really to sort of get more information about what they will fund for those ones. And that's a 3-year fellowship, and you can't have any staff or anything on that one. And it's only 6,000 a year for research expenses for Leave the Hume. 1851 Research Fellowship, again, that's like an early one. But can you see they only fund 8 fellowships a year, so you've only got 1% success rate, so it's like really low. But can someone just turn off that boiler? Sorry, just at the plug or something. Yeah, I didn't make such a loud noise. Thank you. So so the 1851 fellowship annual call, duration of 3 years, 8 fellowships per year, so you've got 1% success rate. So, you know, if you've got the time, it's not a particularly big application, that one, if I remember, but you've got to accept with basically all of these that the chances of getting them all are really, you know, quite low, but you've got to apply, which don't have a chance. And that's, you've got to be within the first 3 years of that one. There's no internal SIFs for those one. So that is one that if you wanted to apply for, as long as we've got approval from the department, you could go ahead and apply for it. So that's worth knowing. And like I said, it normally opens in October, deadline is in January. And that's for research and science and engineering. BBSRC fellowship, we have within the university, they don't have an internal SIFT as such. They won't say, no, you definitely can't apply, but they have a panel that you have to submit to quite a few months before the pool even opens normally. And they'll sort of look through it and advise you and think if you're at the right stage to be applying now, or if you should be waiting until next year and making your application a bit more competitive. So at the moment, within the departments, we send emails out to everyone, which hopefully you will get when there is a BBSRC fellowship coming up. The other thing to do is if it's something you're interested in doing in the future, like contact us now and let us know, and then we can then hopefully let you know when the internal process comes up and everything, just so you're aware of when it's happening. Again, that's a 3-year one. So we've already had the sort of internal reviews and everything for this year's call, which hasn't even opened yet. And the submission deadline for that should be in May, so we're hoping it will open soon, but we haven't had details yet for the BBSRC one. And that awards funds for your salary, travel and subsistence, consumables, no research staff, but you can have a technician on BBSRC fellowships. And there's no maximum budget. So you're normally looking at paying for about 600,000 or something in a BBSRC fellowship, which sounds like a lot of money, but once you've got your salary and your overheads, it's quite amazing how quickly the budgets get eaten up. Just to put it into context, if you wanted to have a postdoc working on a project for you for a year, because of the amount of overheads, and it's not just obviously your salary cost is nowhere near what we cost for it, but you have your salary cost, and then you have all the employer's costs and national insurance and pension, all stuff like that, and the overheads, which are more than 50%, they're more than the cost of the salary cost put together. A postdoc would cost you about £140,000 for 1 year. So it's amazing how much one member of staff costs, and that's come from the university for all of those overhead costs and everything to have that person. So it's a cost which is worked out by the finance system, and UKI are happy with it, but obviously people are always normally really shocked when they want to cost someone into a project and think how, they expect it to be like £30,000 or something like that for a year, and it really isn't. So it's just knowing about the cost for staff. But most of the fellowships that you'll be starting on, you can't have staff on them, so it's not an issue, but some of them you can do. It's just something to sort of be aware of. And just, it's the same thing. Remember, for you, your salary cost will be about sort of 140,000 per year. So although you might have a big budget, it suddenly gets eaten up once you've got like a 3-year fellowship or something like that. So it's we will help you though, obviously, with all of those costs, and then you start to understand, where the figures are coming from. Okay, so Welcome Early Career Awards. They have 3 calls per year for Welcome. We have to get approval from the department for those. There's no internal SIFs for those at the moment, but we do need approval because Welcome don't cover overheads, so the university has to cover the overheads. So they do support them, but you normally just have to have a good justification of why you're ready at the moment to be applying for one. And you can include a research assistant on a Welcome Early Career Award, and they're a 5-year fellowship, which is like, you know, really quite nice. And you get up to £400,000 for research expenses as well. So you get a really nice chunk of money and time and a research assistant to do your work. Now you can normally, this is the thing, although it's like a big, you know, fellowship, big award, you can't normally have more than 3 years of postdoc experience. So they're aiming at early careers. So if it's something you're considering, you want to be thinking about it really early on into, you know, sort of like your career and everything. They are competitive. They don't give us the figures of how many they fund. We have, we've got one at the moment. We've got Mark Hampson, who's a Welcome ECA fellowship holder at the moment. So we've got examples, you know, and we have a few up in Streatham as well. So you can get them, but they're competitive. But again, do you think, you know, it's right for you? And if your sort of research fits, you know, within it, then go for it. What they say, it's really weird with their remit. So many of the remits are a bit sort of grey and vague about what they cover, but they basically, it's got to improve. The main thing is that final line. It's got to have the potential to improve human life, health and well-being. So if you can get your research to work into that, that's great. A lot of people find they just can't, and so Welcome is just not a funder that they consider. But it's worth looking at all the different things they do fund. And again, you can see on their website what they funded in the past. So maybe I could get mine to sort of work into Welcome, because they are a good funder because of the amount, you know, we can get from them.
Can I ask you a quick question about
Yeah,
the
of course.
costs?
Yeah.
Does that have to be for like all of everyone, or can it be for a specific segment of people?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't, obviously, it doesn't have to cover like everybody, but yeah, a particular sort of like, segment of society or anything. Yeah, then it can all,
That's maybe not even their life or their well-being.
Exactly, yeah, because I think it's probably quite difficult to find something that's going to improve everybody. But you might do, it'd be great if you can. But yeah, it can be like particular areas, geographical areas, and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, it can be quite sort of. So the NERC Independent Research Fellowships is another one that I've supported quite a few of, and within ecology and conservation we have quite a lot of NERC fellowship applications going through. That one, they do have an internal process. Now, with all of the UKRI funders, they've been a bit sort of like wary with their budgets and everything recently. So some of the fellowships have been postponed, and the NERC fellowship was one that was postponed. It's normally in October of each year, but this year it's been pushed back all the way to April for the submission deadline. So just because fellowships have been held at a certain time in the last year doesn't guarantee that there will be a submission date at the same time the following year. So we do literally have to wait until the call opens to see. And they do change things obviously with each round slightly as well. So it's always a bit of a wait and see. But, you know, we expect them to be coming up, so you can still be preparing your application and getting ready for it, but we don't know exactly when the submission deadlines will be until the call opens. So the NERC ones, a duration of 5 years, they award about 14 awards a year, so it's about a 10% success rate, 1 in 10. So I would say most of the fellowships tend to be on average about a 1 in 10 sort of success rate. So don't plan and say, oh, I'm going to apply to the NERC in like 2025 because that's when my postdoc contract finishes, and then I've got, you know, good chance of getting it, and then I can start work on it. Because the likelihood is you won't get it the first year that you apply. Most people, if you're lucky, you might, and some people do, but quite often people are successful their second, third, fourth attempt or something. So you've got to be aware that, you know, they're all really competitive. The good thing with NERC is they will give you feedback. Now, if you're not successful, some of the other funders don't give you anything, like Royal Society at first stage, they just get an email saying you weren't successful. And it's really frustrating because you don't really know what you did wrong or anything like that. So it's a bit of a sort of lottery, but the good thing is if you apply to something like NERC and you're not successful, at least you'll get some feedback, which can help you then to sort of work on the proposal a bit more and, you know, see what you've done, what you might have done wrong. And you can't have research staff or equipment on a research fellowship. They used to have a sort of time limit, but they've taken that away now, which is really good. So basically, as long as you can justify that you're an early career researcher, there's no time limit on when you did your PhD to when you can apply for the NEC, which is really good. I think they're realising, and lots of the funders are starting to realise that people have career breaks and for all sorts of reasons go and do different things. They might come back to academia. So quite often, even with all of them, when they say like it's got to be within 3 years or something, if you can justify that you weren't actually in research then and you were doing something else, you can normally apply. They might say that you're still eligible and everything. So it's worth sort of like, don't count yourself out automatically when you look at the timescales. It depends, what you've been doing. And then Royal, I'm going to go through this really quick because I'm not going to run out of time. So Royal Society is a great one if you get it, because they're 8 years. So you get a budget of 1.83 million, which is like, good for over 8 years. It's surprising how quickly that can get used up. And you can have a research assistant and a PhD student on those ones. But those on the Royal Society one, you need to have between 3 and 8 years of research experience since PhD. And there's loads of different areas that they sort of cover. But again, you want to look on their website to see if your research would fall into those things. And there's no internal, there's no internal process for Royal Society. So you just need to get approval from your department, which you can do through us if you want to apply for Royal Society. And Dorothy Hodgkin, as I said, that's the same duration, but that's for people who have got like care needs and things like that as well. So, it might be. UKRI Future Leader Fellowship. So I'm going to talk about this really briefly. This is a big one. And we have an internal sift, and only 6 people from within the whole university are allowed to then submit to the Future Leader Fellowships. It's a duration of 4 years, and then you're quite likely to then get 3 years on top. So it's basically like a sort of 7-year fellowship, and you can have staff and everything working on them. The problem, well, it's not a problem, but the thing to be aware of for the FLF is that permanent members of staff can apply as well. So although it says it's early career, if you're changing your research focus or things like that, you can apply when you're a permanent member of staff and things. So they're actually really competitive because you've got permanent members of staff applying as well. So I would say if you are really early career, I wouldn't consider this one to start with. That's something you want to be looking at a bit further sort of like on. And you almost need to have got you need to have had like some grant funding yourself and everything in some way before you apply for that. Quite often you can have a fellowship before you then apply for the UKRI fellowship. So be aware of it. It's worth looking at it to sort of see. But I would say although they classify early career, it's really sort of early mid-career, I would say. Those ones are really aimed. And then I'm going to pass on to Celine, who's going to talk to you for a bit about the EU one.
So briefly, I just want to give you a quick overview of what is Horizon Europe, where most of all the research grant coming from. So in 2024, the UK became an associated country to the European Research Programme. And that research programme is Horizon Europe. And that means that we can now take part in the various programmes, taking like any other EU countries. There are 3 big pillars of research in terms of programmes. Pillar 1 is about excellent science. It's actually about you as a researcher and big ideas that you can have regardless of the fields. Pillar 2 is different grants and different calls decided by the EU, and that's for collaborative work, different organizations, different researchers. And pillar 3 is really for collaboration with industry. There's also some funding for widening participation and networking, so it's not a thing to forget about. So at the moment, today we're going to look at opportunities in Pillar 1 in ERC and management. So the MSK postdoctoral fellowship That's really an opportunity for you to actually travel in another institution, in another country, and work on a project, but also have some training for you to become an independent researcher with the help of your supervisor in that your institution. You've got two types of fellowships. So one, which is a European fellowship, you decide to go in a EU country, another EU associated country, and you stay there for up to 2 years. And you've got the global fellowship where you have to choose as well another EU country, but also what they call a third country, which is anything that is not EU or associated, for example, America. And you spend there about 1 or 2 years. And then after you spend another year in that other institution, in that other EU country associated. So it's just a good way to, again, meet different people and travel. So the criteria for those postdoctoral fellowships, it's really for you to have completed your PhD at the date the application is due. And on the other side, to have a maximum of 8 years experience in research. There are some mobility rules, so you can have a look in detail in the guidance, but basically you should not have been working or studying in the country you're choosing to go to for at least a year within 3 years. There's no requirement in terms of nationality or field of research. And the funding you're going to receive, that's a living allowance according to the level of, it's a coefficient that's decided by the EU, what you're going to get according to which country you're going to. You're going also to have a mobility allowance, family allowance if you decide to go with your family, and different other specific allowance according to your personal circumstances. And you're also going to get some, I think it's limited, but you do receive some funding for research, training, and also networking costs. So the MSK was a fellowship. Then you've got ERC starting grant. That's not a fellowship, but it works like one. The ERC started, so ERC's got, I should explain first, 4 different types of funding. So they've got the starting grant, they've got the consolidator, the advance, and synergies, that really to offer funding to any kind of experience level, really. What you have really for ERC, that's, sorry. It's really, again, to focus on you and what a great researcher you are, irrelevant of your level. If you haven't got a lot of experience, they take that into account, but they're going to look at your CV, for example, and see that you're a rising star in your field, really. So it's all about you, about your track record, and about you affirming your independence as a researcher. And your research needs to be ambitious. You can show that you can take risk, a calculated risk, obviously. And everything needs to be of a groundbreaking nature. They want something quite bold and quite new. In terms of criteria, you need to be at least 2 years after your PhD, up to 7 years. I forgot to put that. That's actually, you have a minimum of 50% FTE on the grant. And you can receive up to 1.5 million euros on a period of 5 years. You can receive another extra million according to if your research needs equipment, big capital equipment, or if you need relocation money, for example.
Lynn, can we just explain, so just in case anyone doesn't know, when we talk about FTE?
Sorry.
No, it's only because we use acronyms all the time. So FTE is like full-time employment, isn't it? I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's according to, for example, if you're working here, a full-time employment, it means you need to spend at least half of that time on the grant. If you were already employed at 50% yourself, you work only half a week, we need to have at least half of that time dedicated to the research.
Could you have full time on it?
Yes,
So you can put you can work full time?
absolutely. You can do 100%. We ask people to think about that actually, because if you spend 100% over 5 years on that grant, you don't really have a chance to experience anything else, work on another little project or do a bit of teaching or things like that. So it's something to consider, I would say. The thing as well, you were saying things take time. ERC applications are lengthy and very specific. So take your time, don't rush into it, think about it, do your research, plan. Even for advanced grants, it takes 6 months to do them. So again, you said a year, you can think about, in a year to do a very good application. So really, so that was my bit. What I wanted you to think of as well is beyond planning and beyond that, there are a lot of opportunities actually that the EU gives for you to network. There's some tools as well, and really have a look at it because it will help you to actually be aware of what's happening in the EU landscape in terms of policies, and also how those policies fit or don't fit with your research plans. It will help you create collaborations, so network again with different people, and it will help you actually plan your future and plan your research. I've put here a couple of places where you can find information. So they've got an e-magazine that sends you news about what's going on. You've got also a place where you can connect with other researchers. And there are other grants you can consider actually at a certain, in a few years' time. It's taking part in collaborative grants, which were in the pillar 2, I showed at the beginning of my talk. There are the MSCR staff exchange and also the cost fundings, which are all linked about networking with other researcher Europe really. And I've put here other links as well for you to explore. And at the back, what I want you to have a look at is the UCRO, which is actually really good. UCRO is actually the Brussels office of UKRI. And do log in there and register, because you will have access then to their training information and a lot of other events that you can attend. I'm sorry. And it is actually really, really good. They've got a lot of training available. You can also look at the training slide and recording that they've done for ERC or Marie Curie. So that's actually a good thing for you to look at first. And that's me done.
Right. So a few slides to go through.
So we just one question.
Yes, of course.
Are you going to share the slides?
Yes, yeah. So for everyone who's come today, we've got all of the contact details Anurag has, so we'll send all the slides out to you, so you can get all of the links and everything from those after. Because I know this is the problem. There's so much information, isn't there? It's difficult to sort of take it in. So just really quickly, how to prepare for a fellowship. We sort of talk about the 3 Ps. It's mainly the person and the proposal, okay, that you need to be thinking of. Person, why you? Why is now the right time for you to be applying for this fellowship? Proposal, how is the project unique? How will it position you as a world leader? What are the benefits and impact from your proposal? But also, it is really important to think about the place. You don't have to be hosted at Exeter. We're more than happy if people do want to be, and if you get approval, but you might find that for the research you're doing, it's actually better to move somewhere else. So do consider about where you want to be hosted. We quite often have external candidates who want to be hosted at Exeter. So if you want to be hosted at Exeter, we'll support you with an application. If you want to be hosted at a different institution, they will need to support you with the application to be hosted with them. But all fellowships there will at least be a question about why why do you want to be at Exeter and things like that. It's fine, even if you've done your PhD here and then you've been a postdoc and you want to stay here for the fellowship, that is fine. And I think funders are realising more that people have sort of, families and lives and stuff maybe outside of work, so there's reasons why they want to, personal reasons why they want to be based here. But it's just about justifying why you're in the best place to do your research. So if you can justify that you've got the best researchers around you and things like that, then it's fine to stay here. But you do need to really think about that and be able to justify that in your application. And what I would suggest is if you have been here in Cornwall for a long time, you want to have your fellowship hosted here, you really do need to have some quite strong sort of collaborators and external sort of like partners that you work with, just to start to really show your independence and reaching out away from your supervisors and things like that. So I'd really consider about how you can sort of show your independence if you're going to be staying in the same location. So fellowship assessment process, you might have heard people talk about this resume for researchers. It's also called a narrative CV or the capability to deliver. It's actually a really good thing. It's instead of having a traditional CV, they're moving down the route of maybe people have had different ways into academia or at different experiences. And so basically a narrative CV in all of the UKRI fellowships, just about, I think, they all have narrative CVs now instead of the traditional CVs. And it'll be split into 4 sections. So it'll be the generation of knowledge, which is where you're talking about, you can talk a bit about publications, things like that, development of individuals, how you've worked with others, wider research community, and also about how you've worked with broader society. We've got lots of examples of those within applications we can send to you. And I did send out an email to my departments. It's really worth looking on the researcher development website where they have all their sort of learning training, because they have a really good training session, which is just about narrative CVs, and they'll go through that in an online session and sort of like help you to sort of start building your narrative CV. Because if you haven't done one before, it takes a while to sort of get your head around it and sort of, just to get the format right and everything. So I do recommend looking for their training and sessions on that. And we can help you as well. We can go through and show you examples and look at drafts we've got. So fellowship assessment process, like I said, the fellowship criteria are normally the same, whatever funder you normally tend to go for. They'll be looking at the candidate, research quality and vision, research environment where you're going to be hosted, what resources you'll get, and what management and what support you'll get, and also who will be the beneficiaries from the fellowship and what impact can fellowship bring. So it's really important to read the core guidance, because you might have core guidance from previous year, but like I said, it can change quite often. So the websites are normally quite clear about, what the assessment process is, etc., and eligibility criteria. If you've got any questions about that, any of that's not sure, just come and ask us and we can sort of go through that with you. And just some top tips for successful applications. Plan your application early. Like when I say it takes like 12 months to do an application, it doesn't mean you're writing for 12 months, but it's just maybe from having that initial idea, starting to build up those partnerships, external collaborations, getting those smaller travel grants and everything, looking at other examples of CV, examples of applications, speaking, getting the right mentor for you. It's a big process and you don't want to be rushing to it. Speak to as many people as possible and get as much support as you can. And it's really true, although the fellowship application is just for you, you can't do it on your own. You do need support from your community, and there are lots of academics and the directors of research which are normally really supportive of that. So do reach out, and if you're not finding the support that you need from other academics, come to us and we can find that for you. So, you should be getting that support. And like I said, you can look at examples of successful applications, be organised, carefully read through the core guidance. Think about, if you look through some good examples and you think, what is making their narrative CV stand out? Think, what can you be doing now, even at PhD level, to be building those sort of qualities and everything up? So you'll be, you'll have already got that experience and skills by the time you put your applications together. Don't generalise in your application. quite often now, and in the NERC fellowship application this year, they've actually got a specific EDI question. So EDI is equality, diversity, inclusion. So it's really important to have something, but don't just like quote university policy about EDI because it just doesn't mean anything. Think of some, I always say, think of something within your department that you would like to change or that you think could be better with regards to research culture. Focus on that one thing, maybe get involved in some of the committees on campus or anything like that. And that would be so good to have in your application, just to show some evidence, something you've actually done and made a difference. And I think everybody always has something they feel quite strongly about. So it's worth having a think about that, because so much now the funders, although obviously the main focus is the science, you've got to be able to bring other things into it and everything as well. And they will be looking for that in your application. So it's worth considering that. Like I said, independence, build up your good network of collaborators, national or international. You know, it really helps to sell your independence. Sell yourself, which I know a lot of people find really hard to do. So if you are finding it difficult, you can always get a friend or someone to sort of say, and we quite often will change it and say, no, I've been leading, you know, the group with this and things like that. So really, you know, emphasize all the good stuff that you do, but you can also be honest. So recognise your strengths, but it's fine to recognise your weaknesses. There might be areas where you want to sort of develop your skills and experience. You're not going to be perfect at the time you're applying for fellowship. So you want to recognise those areas where you do need to improve things. And that's where you can build in sort of like training opportunities and put costs and things for those into your application. So it's just showing you're really aware of where you are and maybe areas you might want to build on. And like I said, don't be afraid to fail and reapply, because in a way, so much of it is luck. You can do a great application if you're just going in with the, you know, there's just lots of really good applications at the same time. You may not be successful. It doesn't mean that it wasn't good enough. It might just be in the wrong time. It might be little things you can tweak. And it's going to be different panels each time. Different panels will be looking for different things. So there's no magic formula to what makes a great fellowship application. But I really believe in just getting that support, sharing your application, getting it ready a few months in advance of the deadline so you can share it with quite a few different people and get different opinions. If you rush an application and submit it, you know, the day before and no one's had a chance to really read it through for you, it's got a very small chance of being successful. You know a year in advance what the questions probably are going to be asked. There's no reason you can't be working on them, you know, really quite early and getting things together. The ones that I've seen, the people that have been successful, and normally the ones their applications are almost ready to be submitted about 3 months before the submission deadline, and then they're just working on it and getting advice from people. So that's what I would definitely suggest. So that's it for the presentation. That's our email address. So we'll send this around in all the slides, but basically you can contact all of us through the Cornwall Research Cluster email address. Don't ever be afraid to contact us. Don't think we'll be too busy or something. If it's not something that's relevant to us, we can point you in the right direction. Even have a team that might be able to help you. But we'll always look at things with you. And I'm always willing to have a one-to-one chat with anyone who's got specific sort of queries and just wants to maybe look at timelines for particular fellowships and things like that. So please don't be afraid to contact us. Has anyone got any questions in the room at all about anything at the moment? Yeah.
Do you make a decision whether fellowship, like pathway of fellowship, not a specific fellowship, is right for you?
It's really difficult, I know, because you don't want to sort of be too definite in the path that you go down, or maybe actually don't really want, you know, a fellowship at the end of the day. That's why I think it's so important to speak to people. So speak to current fellows and everything, see if, you know, so do you think you make the right decision going down this route that you have? Speak to your supervisor. And like I said, if you're not getting the support you want from them, speak to someone else within the department who can be your mentor for your career development, to really sort of see, you know, the options, because you might want to go down the teaching route or just do something totally different. You know, there's lots, you don't have to go down the fellowship route at all. It's just one of the options that's available to people. So I wouldn't close yourself off to other things, but just sort of, you know, I think it's just about speaking to people and just sort of saying, would that work for me at the moment, or do I actually want to do, you know, something else first? So yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, I think it's just talking to different academics and finding out their experience will really help you to decide what's best for you. Anybody else in the room? No, is anybody online? It's not. Stop. Can you see me on Teams? I think you might be able to see me on Teams.
Yeah. They don't know the.
No, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so no questions now, that's fine. I'll send the slides and stuff around to everyone. But like I said, any questions you've got that you think of afterwards and I want to know more information about those, do just get in contact with us and we can just help you with anything. But the main thing is, the main reason for having this workshop is just to say, we're here and we want to help you all. So do just contact us with anything that you've got. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.